what we're basically saying here is that us adults are in this particular type of a state or are existing in a type of condition where we are pretending the whole time, absolutely unaware that we are pretending, which puts a very peculiar perspective on things. If I was to review my life or parts of my life or what happened in the last hour or so with this particular um, understanding or hypothesis in mind, that actually I was pretending the whole time. None of it was true. None of it was sincere. But at the same time, I was perfectly convinced of the absolute utmost sincerity of every little thing I say. So it puts a very different complexion on things, and it puts a troubling complexion on things. It's it's a reasonably good guess that this kind of mental exercise, where we look back and review our lives, see what it would look like if all of our lives were spent being inauthentic or insincere or pretending without knowing that we're pretending. It's a reasonable bet that no one ever does that. Why would you do that? Have you ever met anyone that did it and came to talk to you about it? Say, hey, what? Hey, guess what? I just embarked upon this kind of mental thought experiment, and yeah, it's kind of, this is what it was. We don't talk about that, and we don't believe in it. So, if anyone was to come up to me and try to explain this particular way of looking at things, I'd say it's a load of shite. Back off with you. I don't believe a word of it. Would you just stop talking fucking nonsense? We wouldn't have any tolerance for it at all. But we are pretending all the same. And if if we are open to exploring the possibility that we might be pretending without knowing that we're pretending, i.e., double pretending, then a whole door would open and we would be able to see quite a lot of stuff. We'd be able, our perspective would be increased. We'd be able to see wider and deeper into things. It would prove to be a fruitful exercise, in other words. So the thing about pretending is that we think it's a kind of either we think of pretending as a childish thing, or we think of it in terms of maybe more culpable as an adult pretending they're lying, they're being a fraudster, they're they're doing all the things that people do anyway. We all know people do that. It becomes accentuated in the case of, I don't know, politicians or leaders. And we can point the finger and we can say they're frauds or whatever. But we're the same, just on a smaller scale. We engage in petty fraudulencies instead of big ones. But how how can we say this? What are we going on? What's the evidence? And there is no objective evidence that we can point to because it's impossible to quantify. You can't. There's no measure for it. There's no litmus test for authenticity. So we're going to have to look into it a bit more in a different way, in a way that doesn't involve measuring stuff and doing formal, rationally instructed experiments, which is no good for psychology. It doesn't the net of thought catches nothing but more thoughts, and we've had enough of thoughts. That's all we ever eat is thoughts. That's our diet. Thoughts, 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 thinking, thinking, thinking. And we imagine that one thought might be the key thought that's going to unlock something for us, a great thought, but all thoughts are the same. It's like watching a very, very boring TV program. And we don't realize that it's terribly repetitive and boring because we're too up close to it, because we haven't got the perspective, because we're stuck to it, because we're identified with that narrative. Step back from the narrative, and that narrative will look absurd. It always does. That's what the absurdists were saying. They were saying, look, it's absurd. And the rest of us are going, oh man, it's not absurd. What are you talking about? Life isn't absurd. Things are meaningful. Things are deeply meaningful because we all say they're deeply meaningful and serious. But all that means is that we're all being absurd together. So, we can't see the absurdity. It means that we're stuck to the narrative. When you're stuck to the narrative, you're very close up to it. You can't see it in any other way than the way which is that perspective, which is the perspective assumed by the narrative. Then the narrative is gold standard truth. It's literally true. That's the whole point of using perspective. Whatever narrative or description of the world you're looking at, when you have no perspective, it becomes a dogma. Get down and prostrate yourself before the great dogma, even though it's when we get perspective, when we pull back a bit, which isn't as easy as all that. Getting perspective doesn't happen very easily. But when we do have perspective, we unfailingly see every single time, in every instance, we will see the narrative is absurd. There's nothing more to say. It's not. You can criticize it and say, "Oh, it's not wrong. It's wrong. It's not right. There's this fault." It's absurd. There's no point. You don't quibble over details when something is gobsmackingly absurd. You just laugh, and then you forget about it. You don't hang on to it. So we're not disposed to understanding this thing about pretending. But what we can say is this: when we're very little, we don't pretend because we have no mental idea or picture of the world to inform our pretending, to give us something to aim at, to give us a thing to pretend to be. We don't have any concept of things, we can't pretend. It's just natural, we're just spontaneous. So then as we go older, we get information in our heads. It's not really information, the wrong word. It's we get enculturated, enculturalized, we get um, culturally shafted, basically. We get loads of descriptions of the world put into our heads that we can't question. That's what happens. We get inducted into a game, and the game is, this is the way it is, right, folks? And you go, huh? Get on with it. Just carry on as if that is it. It's not it. It's just me saying, this is the way things are, right? And then everyone just goes, okay, yeah, sure, and goes on with it and never thinks about anything else. So that is a game. It's not a very technical explanation of a game, but that's the gist of a game. Games are pretending. Only the thing about this is when we're in a particular conditioned environment, we find that certain thought, certain feelings are validated and legitimized by this environment. And so we learn to have more of those feelings, more of those thoughts, more of those behaviors. Of course. That's how it works. That's called adaptation with a capital A. And the ones which don't get validated, that earn us a funny look or cause us to be ignored or dismissed or cause us to be punished or someone to get angry with us, or we push them back down again. We get rid of them. So at the end of this enculturalization process, where we've learned what goes and what doesn't go, what's approved of and what isn't approved of, we're gravitating the whole time like the stem of a young plant gravitates towards the sun. We're gravitating towards approval. Approval is our sun. Bowing down before the sun god of approval. The inevitable result of this is that we become false creatures. We become kind of like Frankenstein's monsters, really, made up of bits that society approves of. And minusing the bits that society doesn't approve of, which is our actual authenticity, which is to be authentic is to go against every game going. No one playing a game like someone to be authentic because that's the end of the game. So authenticity is not go down well. We don't know what it is anyway because it's not as if we can suddenly become authentic after being inducted into the game because we think the game is us being authentic. So by this process of socialization and culturalization, we end up being this person and we're honestly convinced that it is us. I'm convinced that this is me. Who else would it be? It's me. And yet all of these things are the whole me that I'm talking about is an artificiality. It's a kind of it's been induced by the biases in the conditioned environment. It's a reflection of the biases in the conditioned environment. It is that conditioned environment, and there's nothing left of me there. So we can say quite happily that, that this is pretending. I'm pretending to be someone who I'm not, and I'm pretending to be someone who never was, ever, and never will be. And this is what you call absurd.